Hi, Suvik.
Hi everyone at Metrologically Speaking. So today we have Paul Oberle from US. So he is a chief metrologist and has diversified interest with various fields, but metrology being the key point. And today we are going to have a conversation, and we are going to ask him about how he started off and things he is into at this point of time, and what will things how he sees the market going ahead. So all over to you, Paul.
So my company is called AvantMA, and so that comes from the concept of avant-garde, which is really something that focuses on innovation. And so what my company does is we try to marry um, the highest quality synergies between innovative companies and resources, business development, as well as funding. What that means is that we work with companies at early stage to help them develop business strategy, business plan, but then we also help them in the midsection of their life cycle with funding and then growth and execution. So that's kind of what we do at AvantMA. I have a wide range of experiences in almost every single industry as a consultant, and that's what we focus on, is trying to enable both small and mid-sized companies to excel. And at this point, it's more true than ever to be digitally transformed, because that's one of the things that's the most important for success in this current market, and I think in the future. Yeah. So I'm a mechanical engineer, and so by training, I think that mechanical engineering or any of the engineering sort of applied sciences are really important for people that want to be involved in technical fields, because ultimately what it does is it helps you understand how the world works. Like, if you understand how mechanically things work, then you can almost do anything you need in order to make the world a better place. And so that's kind of what has always driven me from the beginning. I had no idea what metrology was when I was in college. There's so many colleges in the United States, and I think that probably to an extent internationally, that do not teach practical metrology in the university. What traditionally colleges have taught is they would traditionally teach instruments and measurements, and they would typically cover the subject at the theoretical level. And that's very interesting when you're talking about um, the theory and new technologies, how to use MEMS, what is measurement. It is good to have that background, but what's missing, I think that I find this often case in the university system, is the practical application of that knowledge is so important. You get that practical application when you work in engineering at large, when you're doing dynamics, when you're doing statics and things like this. But since instruments and measurements and metrology is a growing field, and it's getting more and more visibility, because now suddenly we're using metrology to make better manufacturing decisions. Now it's an essential tool. Now I think we're going to see more and more colleges really emphasize their interest and respect to support students who want to understand the practical metrology, as opposed to simply the science of measurement. So,
okay. So, Paul, just to understand, how have you been associated with this field of it? Like, how did you get into
yeah,
this field of
I fell
metrology?
into it. I fell into it, and so
Okay.
that's kind of the point. So in
So,
college, you do a bunch of
have you been in this field, into this field?
well, most of my entire career.
Okay.
But again, I didn't know what I was doing. So
Mm-hmm.
when I graduated, I joined. When I graduated initially, I did a lot of different work here in St. Louis. Now prior to graduation, I was doing a lot of consulting engineering. But anyway, in graduating, I joined a company in California that focused on um, the measurement of molecular size and weight
Excellent,
of
excellent.
vapors. Yes.
Okay.
But I didn't think of that as metrology. I had no idea.
Okay.
But it is. It's all metrology because we're measuring, we're understanding the world. And so I started with molecules and atoms, and the purpose was so that you could quality control foods, beverages, and things like this, or you could instantaneously detect precursors or evidence of a bomb, of some kind of a narcotic, or some kind of a dangerous element. And so I was actually I've never had the chance to be I've never been arrested or tased or gotten in any kind of law enforcement trouble, but I spent a lot of time with the law enforcement team at the Snohomish County, Washington,
Okay.
Washington State, and
Mm-hmm.
I taught them. We put together a classroom for the use of this technology to identify drugs, cocaine, marijuana, um, different types of explosive materials and things like this. And so in that practice, in that
Mm-hmm.
experience with the Snohomish County Police Department, I had the opportunity to be tased for the first time in my life. So they attached some diodes to me and shocked me with a bunch of electricity. It's pretty much a rite of passage that you go through when you're going through law
Okay.
enforcement training. So that
Uh-huh.
was a pretty cool experience.
Okay. So, just trying to understand, going
Yeah,
ahead as to, coming to the present times. So, go ahead and tell us, exactly what you do,
yeah,
presently. How are your stakes with different companies? What I could make out is you have different interests in different companies in different sectors.
sure.
And but
So
metrology being the center point. So, just,
yeah,
could you sum it up as to, how you are involved into different verticals with metrology being the center point of all these things?
sure. Um, so that was molecular. Then I went into long range scanning. So I went from the molecular level to long range, hundreds of meters of distance measurement. And so what is my stake in the industry? The point I want to make is that I never knew what I was starting. But once I got into it, I realized that metrology lets you see. It lets you see and recognize reality, and then it can let machines make better decisions. I mentioned this in previous discussion with you. So my stake in metrology is that the only way the world can ever hope to improve and become a better place is by helping our engineers, helping the people that are involved in autonomous vehicles, the people that are involved in even finance, people that are involved in healthcare, the people that are in aerospace, automotive, consumer electronics products, the list goes on. Every single one of these industries, there's not a single industry that's not included here. Every single one of these industries has to be able to see the reality, but they have to allow a machine to understand and see that reality so they can disseminate how to make better decisions and execute that. This is the only way. There is no other way. And
Yeah,
if you think that that's wrong, it's not a negative thing. It's if you think that's wrong, it's probably because you're in a service industry, and that may not have any relationship to you. But in regards to manufacturing or any kind of modeling, the amount of data that we're capturing, it is not possible for a person to manage all this stuff.
okay. So, Paul,
Yeah.
just to understand, like you are presently associated with 3D Infotech and Universal
Mhm.
Automation. So, exactly, how does things work out there? What's your role there?
Yeah. So I'm a consultant, and so my company, we consult with a couple different companies. 3D Infotech is one of my clients, and then there are several others. Some in the energy space, some in the medical space, and
Name a few of them so that the audience out here in India and Asia would
yeah.
get to know.
Okay. Well, some of the smaller companies are small, so small that they're startups.
Okay.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm working with a company called Robatu Productions,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm working with a couple others. that actually there's an organization that I'm working with right now. That's a really interesting company. That is, it's based in the United States, but in fact, the founders of the company are from India.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and actually, even with my oil and gas interests, or chemical processing interests, there is a couple companies that I've had discussions with in India as well, because corrosion monitoring is an incredible technology that can really free up a ton of resources for plant managers, so that they can. So instead of wasting time looking for a problem, they can know where the problem is and then spend resources to correct that problem.
So with the oil and gas industry, how are your how are your interests varying with the oil and gas industry? What kind of services or
So what I'm focused on right now is actually corrosion monitoring, because corrosion is one of the most costly, impactful issues that petrochemical has to manage. And so it's not just oil and gas, but it's any kind of chemical.
Is it more of into the downstream business of the oil and gas sector?
Yeah, it's the processing. It's the processing of that raw material into something refined.
Okay. Yeah. The midstream or the downstream sector, to be very specific.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but see, the thing is that with this technology, it's actually economically feasible to apply it for midstream.
Okay.
Yeah. Whereas the current technology, it's not possible to do that, so not economically feasible. But with the technology that I'm promoting and sharing with companies in India and the United States as well, it is very reasonable.
So the companies you have collaboration with in India, so could you name a few of them so my viewers would get to know?
Yeah, sure. So the oil and gas stuff does not come out of India. That's in Europe, or at least corrosion monitoring, that technology comes out of Europe. But in regards to India, I'm working with a team called Maps.io, and it's a really interesting technology that's a complete divergence from what we've been talking about. But in a way, it's related. So let me express something to you. So one of the issues that many buyers have is, especially in the new era of COVID, or post-COVID, as we hopefully get to, one of the biggest issues is, how do you validate that a specific supplier has the product that you need for some specific application? And then second of all, if you're an engineer and you have a high degree of focus on a specific, like, autonomous vehicle application, and that's all you know, you just know autonomous vehicles, you understand the dynamics, all the equations, the algorithms, etc. But you need some way of visualizing or detecting areas around you. Well, how would you know, with all your focus on software and algorithms and all that stuff, how would you be the expert for vision? You may seek out that person, and a lot of times what happens is you get some demonstrations, you get salespeople, and there's some discussions around what the technologies are. There's like 3 or 4 vendors, you talk about it, okay? But at the end of the day, what you're hoping to know is, what are some validated applications? And many salespeople are completely upfront, and they tell you exactly what you need to know, and they give you the whole meat and potatoes of the situation. But the buyer, the engineer, they're typically required to do a lot more due diligence.
Okay.
And so.
Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, and so the point is that, especially in today's age, if you can't have direct interaction with a person, and you can't have that trusted advisor to give you the guidance that you need in a face-to-face conversation, then there's a lot of stuff that you got to do on your own.
Okay. And so you could mention the kind of services which you kind of offer at this point of time while doing this. So, what I could make out is, you have from your profile that you are into app development, custom software development, database development, enterprise content development. So, you could throw some light onto it and then, relate
Yeah.
it to the field of metrology as to how those things get correlated with your consulting business as well.
Sure, sure. So, but what this technology does is it gives visibility about the entire value stream of a product.
Mm-hmm.
It's um, its applications, the components, the subcomponents, everything, and it uses AI to create a networked value stream, so that engineers can have a full understanding about what they're getting themselves into, and because the AI is used based upon their interests in the past, we can also present technologies that would be important to them based upon a new project that they're involved in. And so you have to understand that maybe my description was quite complicated, but the problem is very complicated.
Oh yeah.
And so engineers, they go from one task to the other. Mm-hmm. But what's not happening is there's not always a discussion between one information silo and the other. So maps.io allows companies and engineers to have a networked value stream across the whole organization, across every type of application, and it uses AI to assist and serve relevant technology based upon the new projects that an engineer might engage in.
So what is the kind of change that you see, from the time you started in this field of metrology, in the times of COVID and, so how has there been a shift or a trend that you have been able to identify within this field of metrology, right from, say when things, a couple of decades back, so it was more of contact metrology. Now we are moving towards non-contact metrology, where everything can be done through it, just with the 3D.
Okay.
Just with one of your clients, as to they have cameras put up on robots, just for an example. So it's
Sure.
more of into non-contact metrology. So is there a trend that you have been able to identify, or it's a one-off thing that's going around due to the COVID thing?
Yeah, I believe there is. I think there's a really good trend. So the trend is simply the trend is fundamentally that people realize that they must change. And so the traditional problem with metrology has been that everyone trusts the CMM, but they don't trust anything else. But in order to change, in order to grow, to evolve, now the stalwarts that and CMMs are fantastic. I mean, CMMs are a fantastic tool, but it's not the only tool. And so now people are realizing that not only do they need to change, but now they must change. It's not an option. And previously, say like 10 years ago, there wasn't a huge, there was a need, but there wasn't a demand that someone had to realize that non-contact metrology was the future. If not the future, a component of a visually enabled manufacturing environment.
Okay, so do you see this trend staying over, or you think that it's a passing thing? Again, we are going to go back to the same thing, as I think times of COVID are going to ease out. We are going to go back to the same thing, or this change is going to stay. Like this change.
So I think that there are actually a lot of behaviors that will probably go back a little bit, but in general, the leaders are going to keep on pursuing and innovating. I don't think so. A lot of times people think that there's going to be this one event that just changes the world, and unfortunately, I've not really seen that very often. It's possible, and even in books, in books about science or business or whatever, everyone's talking about the one single thing that changes everything. The 4-hour work week, it's just 4 hours, that's all you do. But I don't really think that that's necessarily true. It's like a really good summary of what can be, but it obfuscates all the complexity that an individual would have to actually do to execute a 4-hour work week.
Okay.
And so it's an oversimplification. There is no singularity. But I think that there's going to be a lot of behaviors that kind of revert back a little bit. I think that the broad megatrend that people realize they must change, it will not. It's just simply catalyzed their realization that non-contact metrology is a very effective way to help their organization perform and do things that they could have never done without that level of fidelity. And fidelity is the biggest issue right now. One of the reasons why non-contact metrology wasn't adopted as quickly as maybe some would have hoped is because the amount of data made it very costly to analyze and use that information. That's the fundamental reason.
So, what I could, just to interrupt you, Paul. Sorry to be interrupting you. So you are also into SaaS, software as a service development, and you offer these services. So how do you think do you put up this whole thing in a complete package and offer it as a solution to your customers that you are putting up your service to, or you singularly use them as and when required? How does this work? Because here in Asia, the Indian markets and Southeast Asian markets, so the viewers would like to know how do you formulate the whole package and put up, because as you said, non-contact metrology is gonna put up huge amounts of data. So just to be processing the whole data and maintaining it and formulating it, deriving the desired results out of that. So that requires a software backup. So how do you put up the whole package around?
Okay, so I mean, for instance, 3D Infotech has a lot of solutions around this, and they're serving these solutions very effectively to a wide range of manufacturers. Most of the big ones we've all talked about, and implemented a lot of really interesting solutions that have never been done. It typically a project starts with the simple initiation or initiative to, I want to measure things better. So that's the first requirement is I want to measure things better. I want to measure it faster. I want a more repeatable solution. I want something that can work in a production environment. And then typically what happens after the initial deployment of something of that nature, then what the owner operator, the user, the engineering director, what they realize is that now they have all this information, like you say, what are we going to do with it, right? We can measure better, we can see better. Now I want to make decisions better. And so then they start implementing it into some broader vision of a smart factory. So let's say like a phase 2 to the overall implementation. And then the phase 3, you're really kind of, your phase 3 is effectively the maturation of your understanding of how to use metrology and actually using it to make a manufacturing change.
Okay.
So at phase 3, now you're talking about how do I manage all this data? How do I archive it, etc. So there's a bunch of different solutions out there. You've got, Amazon, you've got some others that are cloud-based, Azure, etc. There's a variety of ways to house and store data, and there's actually a lot of people that just simply store it in their own internal network. Again, there's no one specific singular solution that's going to solve everyone's problem because there's so many different requirements. The point is that it can be done either internally or externally, and there are solutions today that can make it happen.
Okay, so anything that you would like, the Indian and the Southeast Asian audience, that you would like to be more focused on, or you want this part of the audience to know that a solution or a service that you specialize in, or you have started off newly, anything that you want to throw more light onto, anything that you would like to press upon?
Yeah, sure. So I think that there's a lot of innovation coming out of a variety of pockets of the world. I am really excited to see more of these non-contact metrology devices get used in India in particular. One of the solutions that I think is going to be is very cost effective, and it's the value of the solution is exponential, would be corrosion monitoring, because it doesn't cost a lot. It's much easier to implement, and it does something that every single minute of the day you're going to get value. So those are solutions that we can implement today. I think the costs of some of the non-contact sensors can be a little high for certain parts of the world, and that's been one of the one of the problems in changing from a contact device to a non-contact device, because India has such a great infrastructure in regards to using traditional contact measurement process tools. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, there's a couple companies in India that I talk to on a regular basis. One of the companies that I talk to the most, that I have a lot of respect for, is Prescient, and we're working on some AI solutions that actually are really far-reaching as well. It doesn't really touch the metrology sector, but Prescient has a very good experience in metrology, and we've worked on a number of projects together. And then the other one would be Accurate Gauging. They're a very successful company in India that has done a very good job of building custom CMM machines for the world market, and they have a very good experience in CMM and metrology, traditional CMMs, but they've built some very incredible custom measurement machines that achieve the production speed that you would need with a contact device, which is quite interesting.
Okay. So Paul, it was great having you over to be, having a chat with regards to what you think of the metrology sector in total. And, the audience out here in India and Southeast Asia would be, more than delighted to, listen to your version as to what you think of metrology as a field. And, thank you. Thank you for your time and your availability to be, giving us this whole different viewpoint as to how the people across the globe are thinking about metrology and how we are moving ahead. So here we are signing off, and this is Souvik Mitra from Metrologically Speaking. Thank you.